You guys have a joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight, I am joined by a candidate I'm super excited to have. She is running against, who I call Beelzebub, Debbie Wasserman-Schultz in Florida D23. So thank you so much, Jen Perelman, for joining us tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Absolutely. And guys, I'm sorry, I've got the plague or whatever it is. But thank you so much for sending me all your tips on teas and organic herbal wonderful things. You guys are so sweet. So in any case, what inspired you to run, and especially in such a really big race?
She's been my congressperson for almost 15 years. So it's something that I've been watching a decline of for quite some time. And I actually voted for her in the beginning. So this has been going on. I've been a constituent since she's been there. And the truth is that my oldest just left for college. I reactivated my law license recently, and it just seemed like an opportune moment I had the time to be able to really do that. But it's definitely something that has been in my mind in terms of anybody challenging her. And so I volunteered for Tim's campaign in 2016, very hopeful about that as well. So it's just a matter of this has always been sort of in my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people in Broward who are just done with her. They have been for quite some time. Now, it's really interesting because I had Tim on 3 times. He's actually the first guest I ever had, which is crazy. But we were talking about how natural it seems for people with law degrees or paralegal degrees, anything like that, to go into politics. I didn't realize that until I started interviewing so many candidates. But do you think that's going to be advantageous for you, especially given her proclivities to cheating all the time?
Yeah, we have a group of people that are going to be on top of that as much as we can be as far as her cheating. But no, I think that there's just probably a certain type of person that's drawn into the concept of policy in the first place. So, I actually decided to go to law school. I was working at the Indiana Chamber of Commerce as the media relations director. And I was doing things like setting up press conferences at the State House and at the governor's office and working with the lobbyists for the chamber. And I decided that I wanted to lobby for nonprofit. So I actually spoke with them and asked, would it be a good idea to go to law school? And I got, the consensus was yes, that it would be helpful to go to law school. So I actually went to law school to lobby for nonprofit. And I sort of fell into what I was doing anyway, but that was my original thought. So I always had an interest in policy, and then I got sidetracked with a bunch of other things. So for me, it was always more legislative policy was interesting to me.
And when we chatted the one day on Messenger, you stated that it is just you and her running. There's no one else, not another Republican besides her, nobody else.
There are, I believe there's actually 2 people that have filed as Republicans to run. But this district is so gerrymandered that really the race that matters is our primary. It's almost, once you get past that, November is pretty easy for this particular district to win. So, there's a big group of the Republicans here that they're not even very interested in investing in the race here. It's just the way it is.
Right on. Well, what is your ground game like there? Do you have a lot of supporters who really just want to take her ass out?
Yeah, there's a certain amount of that for sure. A lot of people are very, I'd say, cautious and maybe a little bit leery of even getting into this with her again. And I think some people maybe feel even defeatist to some extent here regarding her just being stuck in that position. And then she does have her group of supporters. She does. She has people that really love her down here, and that they, no matter what, they love her. So it's an interesting mix. And the biggest issue is going to be for us to get voters to come out in a primary, let alone an August primary, and it's a closed primary. So to make sure everybody's registered as Democrats, you know, I think it's 30 days prior to the primary. So, you know, it's hard enough to get people to come out and vote in a general election. So then when you add these layers, it's definitely harder. But I do think that there are people that are being more aware now of what's going on, and they're more interested. So, you know, I work with the League of Women Voters, and we have been registering a lot of voters. So I think it's just people are becoming more aware. I actually think that's a Trump phenomenon.
I'm sorry?
I think it's a Trump phenomenon. I think more people are just aware and paying attention and outraged by whatever their side. Everybody's just angry about something. So people are aware.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing he did, is he inadvertently woke people up and got them off their asses. It's a shame it came to that, but that's, I mean, if you're
I actually knew he would facilitate the revolution. I had this.
Oh yeah.
That's what I said. I said that will, you know, that will facilitate the revolution. And I still think had Hillary won, we'd be exactly where we are, if not somewhere worse, and people would be paying less attention and have their heads back in the sand. So, you know, and you know, a lot of people think that that's crazy, but I think
anyone who knows history, and it was in that election, like I was at the Democratic convention and I was like, Trump just won. Like he won right now. Like he won because we paid attention.
They prefer that. I think they prefer that in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, we see this for what it is, but you know, it's the obstacle that we're up against, and even here.
Absolutely. It's so refreshing to have a candidate who acknowledges these things. You have no idea.
Yeah. Well, you know, I realized within the past few months that I'm only going to make certain inroads within establishment groups, and that just to walk a line and not be totally myself and genuine just does not make sense, because it's not going to serve in any way. So it is what it is.
Absolutely. They're going to try to battle any progressive, regardless if you try to work with them on something. So just screw it.
I mean, and I'm being as politically diplomatic as I can be, but basically, yeah, that's where I've come to with this in the local sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things, obviously, between you guys is you don't accept big money in politics. She's known for it. She's probably still using some of our money she stole from Bernie, if she hasn't used that already. So why did you decide to not take any big money on your campaign, especially going up against someone who probably has, like, you know, just bajillions of dollars at her disposal?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't vote for a candidate who takes corporate money. So there's no other way to do this. If you can't do it this way, then you shouldn't be doing it at all. And one of the biggest reasons that I'm doing this is because she takes so much corporate money. So that's its own answer. I mean, it's just enough already. But yes, it makes it much more difficult, I will say. And I will also say that I am not as concerned as what she's making. She'll outraise us. She'll get all her donations, have her fundraisers. That's fine. I just know what we need to bring in to run the campaign we want to run. So she'll bring in a lot more, but that doesn't mean anything as long as I can do what I need to do on our campaign. So I actually have told people that I don't even want to know the numbers from her number. I really just don't. It's irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, we know it's a lot. That's like really all we need to know. It's a lot. But then you take someone like AOC, who was donated like a fraction of the money to, and whooped his ass. Yeah. So it, like, Bernie says, they have the money, but we have the people. And that does matter.
Absolutely.
So as far as Green New Deal, of course, that's imperative right now, but also the times I interviewed Tim, he told me a lot about the water around around Florida and everything, and how bad how bad it is, and how many fish are dying, and things like that. Do you want to talk on that, and also what you hope to see happen and what you would propose?
Yeah, I mean, we have several different water problems going on simultaneously here. So it's so many things. So on the one hand, we have what's called a blue-green algae, which is a toxic form of algae that forms in it. That's an inland water problem as opposed to an ocean problem. So we have a lot of inland waters here. So what happens is there's this toxic algae that forms as a result of, my understanding, has to do with the nitrates that are released from agricultural polluters. So like industrial agricultural polluters. So here, big sugar is a big one, but they're not the only ones. I mean, it's just, so they have runoff, and it's connected to something with Lake Okeechobee and the pollution of Lake Okeechobee, and then where they let that flow out to and how it affects everything coming down from there. That's as scientific as I understand that, the blue-green algae. But a big part of it is from big sugar. And so, that is something that you could curb, certainly by, I mean, Debbie supports giving subsidies to big sugar. So I don't, so there are things that you can do that sometimes it's a natural phenomenon. Like we also have the red tide issue. That's more of a Gulf water issue. But that is a naturally occurring thing that happens seasonally. There are red tides, but the chemicals exacerbate the problem, and it makes it so much worse. So this past year, the red tide was so bad down in areas like Naples, Sanibel Island, along the Gulf Coast there, that they were finding huge fish, like deep ocean fish, just dead, washing up on the shore. It was something they'd never even seen before. So it's definitely gotten worse. We also have bacteria in the sand and the water on the East Coast, which is another problem, that people are getting different kinds of bacteria infections from the water in the East. I am not entirely sure. They say that's tied to fecal matter, but I don't know what the cause of that situation is. But yeah, we have a lot of problems that we're dealing with here, and it's going to start to affect our drinking water, and it's a problem. I mean, we need to be addressing these issues, and we're not doing anything.
Wow. And then I know places like the Sierra Club endorse DWS. So then I looked into it because I'm like, wait, that doesn't make sense. And they're just not environmental whatsoever. So people see that and they think, oh, okay, well, you know, he's good.
Yeah.
What else about the Green New Deal do you think is imperative that we take care of?
Well, I mean, just from an environmental standpoint, and I was just thinking about this today, the roads, the infrastructure, the problem is so bad here. And one of the things they've taken to doing is they take 2 lanes of an existing highway and they barrier it off. So now it's an express lane for people who pay for it. So they're not adding 2 lanes and making that a paid thing. They're actually annexing 2 existing lanes from taxpayer highways that now you can only go in, and the money changes depending on the time of day, how much it costs to go through. And I'm thinking this would be solved if we had actually rail in this city, anywhere. We have no high-speed rail. We have no good mass transit here. I mean, that's a major problem. But as far as other parts of the Green New Deal, the concept of everybody having a job is very appealing to me, and people actually earning a living wage. So the economic aspects of it are pretty massive.
Absolutely. That was going to be my next question, a federal job guarantee. A lot of people forget that that's like in the Green New Deal, and they're like, well, no. You don't support it if you don't support the federal job guarantee. So Joe wants to know if you're an Elizabeth Warren supporter.
You know what? I'm not anti-Elizabeth Warren, but I wouldn't say she's my choice. So I'm not an Elizabeth Warren hater, but no, that's not my pick.
Who's your pick?
I'm a Bernie girl.
I was gonna say you post a lot of Bernie 2020 stuff.
I do. I do. I mean, it's not proper for me to say that at this point. I'm not supposed to have a team. I'm supposed to be very open to all the candidates.
Oh no, it's actually very smart of you to say that, because what's going to happen is 95% of my viewers are burners. So then they're going to see this and then they're going to say, holy crap, this girl's running against Debbie Wasserman-Schultz and she's a Bernie supporter. And then you're going to get donations, volunteers. And stuff.
I actually signed up to be, I'm actually on their web. There's like this Bernie Crat website, and I actually am on there. I filled out the form to get on there. So I was already affiliated to some extent, but and my dream is to get this concept to go viral. That I have this thought that if all of Bernie's volunteers donated $1 a month to my campaign, and everybody collectively ousts Debbie Wasserman-Schultz, that would be extremely poetically just.
Great idea. Yeah, that's a really great idea. Because
I push it, but it's just got to get out there.
Yeah, that's a really great idea, because all of us all over this country loathe her. Yes, so
I know,
her and Pelosi are like the two main elections. We have to, besides the presidential one, we need to focus on these two, because they affect our whole country, really. So yeah, that's a really great idea. So one of the most important topics, obviously, is Medicare for all. Now, that being said, there are apparently now different kinds of Medicare for all. What do you support in the respect of, do you think they can still have for-profit insurance companies in the mix?
No, I don't. I think that ultimately, I don't see how you can have a for-profit healthcare system and have that work. So for me, healthcare is not something that should be for profit. Now, if everybody has Medicare for all that includes everything that we need, and there's people that want to pay supplemental insurance so that when they have babies, they can have them in 5-star maternity wards and have, the Ritz-Carlton of service, then all the power to them. So if there's any sort of market or niche for that type of, supplemental insurance, then fine. But otherwise, no, I don't understand what that is, other than somebody siphoning out the money from the middle.
Right. Absolutely. How about prescriptions? Some, like Bernie came out with a plan that says $200 max per year. Warren came out with a plan that says $500 max per month. So is Big Pharma one of the things that you want to rally against?
Oh, for sure. I'm gonna go with door A on those choices.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, $200 a year seems appropriate. Yeah, that's another problem. Well, to me, when I think of the middleman in the whole healthcare problem, it's both Big Pharma and the insurance company. They're together. So, they're just siphoning money from different aspects of the same thing. It's the same problem. It really is. So yeah, this is ridiculous. It's crazy that there's people that can't afford their insulin. It's crazy that people have to choose between food and medicine. It's enough already. And then, you have people taking money from private insurance companies, and we're watching this like in real time. And it's almost like being in a bizarro world, we're watching these people basically be bribed to allow everybody else to not have health insurance, and then brainwash people to tell them we can't afford it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And before I forget, you guys, tomorrow night I have a beautiful man on, Scott. He recently, a few months ago, he lost his son, who has a brand new baby, to suicide because he could not afford his $20 copay for his antidepressant. So we're going to be talking to him tomorrow, and his story is not rare, unfortunately. But I think it's important to see people as humans and not just statistics. So before I forget to plug him, definitely tune in tomorrow night, because he's just a warrior. But something that's also being talked about a lot, mainly because Bernie came out with this bill a couple days ago. Housing. Is housing a concern in your district?
Yeah, huge here. We are actually, I don't remember our ranking, but we are in one of the top cities down here, areas, metro regions with one of the worst housing problems of affordable housing. We have a major crisis down here. We have one of the largest income inequality gaps too. So it's part of the problem. Yeah, we have huge housing problem here.
And do you support rent control, like a cap on monthly rent?
Sure, of course. I find it interesting when people when you ask these questions, because it's so like obvious to me, and the thought of somebody saying, yeah, no, I don't. It boggles the mind. Like
Warren came out and said no 2 days ago, so that's why it's been on people's minds, because I'm like, how would she say no to that?
Well, I don't understand how people say no to a Green New Deal that isn't even legislation. It's just a mission statement. I don't understand how anyone could be against that.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as immigration, Florida has many immigrants. How is your district made up? Do you have a lot of immigrants in D23?
We do. In fact, a very good friend of mine was deported a year ago to Venezuela and is now stuck down there in Venezuela. And even though she's actually legally married to a citizen, and it's a nightmare. So we have definitely had a lot of roundups and people being detained. And I mean, everyone knows about the facility down in Homestead that had 3,000 kids in it. So in some ways, we're right at like the front lines for the immigration problem. Our district is a very strange combination because of the way that it's set up. So you've got a lot of older people. Well, it's South Florida, so you have a lot of older people. You have a lot of Jewish people. You have a very strong block of Venezuelans in a particular location. You have a block of Haitians. You've got, I mean, it's a very big, it's pretty diverse, but I would say the biggest voting block would be your older, educated, generally probably upper middle class population is who comes out and votes in the primary.
And do you guys have for-profit prisons as well?
We have the most, actually. Florida's #1.
Wow.
I know. It warms the heart. It's one more thing Florida does the best, but yes, we actually have
yeah, you're #1.
We're #1. But yeah, we have the most for-profit prisons out of any state actually here. It's bad. And they're making so much money on people that it almost feels like we're just having slavery here.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of for-profit prison and people of color, Florida did have a victory. God, it's probably almost a year ago now, where they let ex-felons start voting.
That's Amendment 4. It was Amendment 4, and Amendment 4 passed here with, I want to say it was 64% of the vote. And then now what has happened is since then, our state legislature has now enacted legislation that basically reduces what our whole state just voted to put into play. So we have a very, very Republican-led state house. And now they've put in, essentially the law is putting on a poll tax by making people who are returning citizens, they have to not only repay restitution, but they repay like fees and costs. And the reason that's a problem, I know people are thinking, oh, well, they should, because that's part of their debt. But the problem is most of these people, when they go to prison, that debt is reduced to what is called civil debt. And civil debt is you can have that debt, but that doesn't mean you don't get to vote. You can still owe the money, but that doesn't mean you don't get to vote. So we all have civil debt. You have a mortgage, you have whatever your debt is. It doesn't mean you don't vote. So that's what our legislature just did to undermine what we voted for in the state.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So how does that work? Do they, like, this sounds ignorant, but I'm in Pennsylvania, so we don't have this. Do they literally have to like bring a check to vote? And
no, they have to have everything cleared up before they can register. And if you don't, like let's say you have something that you had a court cost from 20 years ago from whatever county that was, and you don't even know, it could be $20 just sitting there and you don't even know, and you register to vote, And then if they find out that's technically now a 3rd-degree felony. So it is a scare tactic that they're using. And the people who are returning, obviously, it's an effective scare tactic. Sure. So would that happen? Would they go after them? Would they prosecute it? You know, I happen to think that if that does happen, that would be the test case. That would be the case where it has to go through the courts to realize that law that they just did was not within our Constitution. So, but nobody wants to be that person.
Yeah. Well, the one woman, I forget what state, she's in jail for voting in the wrong district.
Yeah.
She's in jail for 5 years. I mean, it was literally an accident. Wow. That's
interestingly, maybe she was taken in a place where they have a very big for-profit prison system, because that's, you know, when you're making, I mean, on the kids in the detention center, it was $750 a day per person per head. So there's no incentive to let people go.
No. Wow. That's incredible. So as far as, what else, as far as criminal justice, do you hope to work on?
Well, I can actually say what I am working on, at least for in the state level. One of the biggest issues in Florida also is called direct file. That's where children are charged as adults and tried as adults and in adult facilities. And Florida, of course, is #1 again in direct files. And so we have kids as young as 14 years old being charged as adults and put in adult facilities. So the direct file issue is big for me. I'm co-chair of the Juvenile Justice Committee for the League of Women Voters in Broward. And that issue is basically going to be our primary issue going into the 20 legislative session here. On a national level, I'm much more interested in decriminalizing marijuana, expunging, commuting, releasing everybody that has been incarcerated for nonviolent drug offenses. And I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start. I mean, I have this dream of a Bernie Sanders presidency, and it would just he'd probably need the first 100 days just to commute everybody's sentences. And, you know, that's what I think. Yeah.
What would be a typical thing that, would put a 14-year-old in jail as an adult?
Yeah, interesting. See, then this is where the plot thickens, right? So I was sitting in a talk from a gentleman from the Southern Poverty Law Center who actually had all the statistics for Florida for direct files. And actually the #1 reason why juveniles are charged as adults is burglary. Okay, but burglary is generally not a violent crime. So you would think, well, they say it has to be a violent crime, but burglary isn't a violent crime. So through further research, the state of Florida has it statutorily that burglary is by definition a violent crime. And so it's almost like just casting a nice wide net to get as many people as possible. And so that is and that's the primary offense. Specifically in Broward, I would bet in most places with teenagers, probably that would be one of the main offenses. But yeah, and the scariest part of all of this is that the discretion and the decision as to whether or not to try a juvenile as an adult is solely in the hands of the state attorney. No judicial oversight, no due process, no nothing. So that right there, the due process, is the actual piece of policy that we're trying to get through in Florida, to require there to be judicial oversight for that decision to try a juvenile as an adult. And they keep them in adult facilities while they're pending this.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I can't even fathom.
We actually had a couple weeks ago, a 17-year-old hung himself in Broward County in the jail that was being held as an adult, 17, and he killed himself.
Oh my God. Wow. That's heartbreaking. I digress a bit, but when is your voter registration deadline?
I'm not entirely sure when our deadline is for voter registration. Do you know? Our primary is August 18th, 2020. I know that I believe it's 30 days prior, because I know it's 30 days prior when you have to be registered as a Democrat. So I would think that it's just when you have to be registered. So that would be July, 18th, July 19th, 2020.
So I'll give my spiel to the audience as always. Register as DEM. I know it's going to feel dirty, but this is good.
It really does.
What's that?
It really does.
It does. I know.
Well, I then exited in 16 and actually reaffiliated so that I could do this, because it's the only way to do it in this district.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely register DEM, but also keep checking to make sure you're still registered DEM, especially in Broward, in New York, in California. This is where we saw these things. So definitely. Peter says July 20th is the primary voter.
Right here.
Oh, thanks, Peter. So one of the people in the chat is speaking on the Everglades. Do you have anything you'd like to speak on? They have some concerns about what's going on.
Did they ask anything in particular?
I didn't see anything in particular. Okay.
No, I'm a big fan. I could talk a lot about the Everglades. I'm a second generation Florida native, so I could talk a lot about the Everglades. I grew up down here. It's the only place in the whole world where alligators and crocodiles coexist. Yeah, that's Everglades trivia. But on a serious note, right now we are dealing with one particular company that has been given a lease to drill in the Everglades, and the spot where they want to drill is actually, I want to say like 8 miles west of really where people live, but it's right where our drinking water canals intersect. So that's a current situation that's pending in the Everglades, is this particular oil well that we're fighting. In general, there's a lot of problems with the Everglades. We've got invasive species that have taken over. So things like pythons that aren't from the Everglades that are now rampant in the Everglades. So they have open python hunting at certain times of year, and they actually pay people per python to try to gather them out of the Everglades. There's all sorts of, there's a lot of ecological problems out there, but it's just a really special place. Have you ever been?
No. I just went to Florida a few months ago when we went to Siesta Key.
That's really pretty.
Yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah, and then we went to Key West for our honeymoon. So nice. That's about it.
Yeah, Disney a bunch of times. You drove by the Everglades. You drove around the Everglades to get.
I know. That was oh my God. And then we had to get back to work. And I was like, I want to go to the Everglades so bad.
It's interesting. It's a very interesting ecosystem. It's the only place in the whole world that is its same ecosystem. It's just so unique. And there's so many species that only live there. So it's very special. It's a very special place. So when people talk about doing things out there that not only are going to hurt us, but it's going to kill, they would take out so many different species that would just be destroyed in doing some of these things. So it's constantly having to be on watch for the Everglades.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure I know the answer to this anyway, but does Debbie Wasserman-Schultz do anything about the water, the Everglades, anything? Does she even talk about that stuff?
No, I will say this though. When they're talking about the drilling, the current situation at hand, she has spoken out against them doing that. So, and that has been the most recent issue that's come up with dealing with the Everglades. So I've never seen her proactively do anything regarding our water or regarding the Everglades or regarding that. I've never seen her proactively do anything, but and she takes money from Big Sugar that is part of the problem of the blue-green algae. Now that's not specifically an Everglades problem. So it's hard to know. I mean, it's easy to stand up and say, I'm against this drilling, especially when it's sort of the safe answer and you have a lot of collective agreement in that moment. And it's an easy win. So honestly, I don't know. She hasn't like specifically done anything horrible, but she takes money from the Florida Power and Light, essentially. It's Nextera, right? Is that what it is? It's Nextera.
Nextera Energy.
Nextera Energy. So, I mean, definitely takes money from interests that would be contrary to what we would think is necessarily environmentally sound.
Right. Absolutely. Let me see. Okay, so do you think she will debate you?
No.
I don't either.
She, the problem is that there's a couple of issues where she's good, she's gun control, Israel, like there's certain things where she's very popular and, but those are things where she and I agree. So there would be, there's no debate to be had. There's nothing of substance there for us to debate. I agree with her issues there. So no, I don't think that it would, if I were one of her people, I wouldn't recommend that she debate anybody on anything, because what would she say?
Well, her only say would be, I'm a woman, you're sexist, but she couldn't do that with you, so she'd be screwed.
No.
Yeah.
So, and more so when I'm a Jewish woman too. So, that makes it even harder.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was saying that's, that is something that is going to be a selling point for you, being a woman, because unfortunately, identity politics are a thing. So what's next for your campaign? Have you started phone banking, canvassing, or is it still kind of early?
It's a little early. We've started some phone banking. We haven't started canvassing. We're still working on putting together field people. But we're planning a launch at the end of October. October 26th will be a launch party. Details to be determined at this point. And so really what we're doing right now is needing money so that we can really start off where we need to be. And I really also want a bus. We have this idea of having a bus and being able to be mobile and go all around and I'd like this to be service-oriented campaign. So if I have X amount of people that are volunteers and canvassing, we're going to split it up between actually canvassing and doing volunteer stuff. And I really want to support local nonprofits and small organizations. So really, we're going to be service-oriented with this. That's a great idea. So I really like a bus. That's kind of that's what I want. But no, in general, we need money. We need to get out there. We need to be getting ads out and doing stuff and being able to be competitive. So no, we need money right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you give everyone your, and Peter, if you want to put it in the comments, you can as well. If you want to give your website, your Twitter, your Facebook, all that fun stuff.
We are at gen2020.com. That's Gen with one N, 2020.com. And that's the same Facebook. That's our Facebook page as well. On Instagram and Twitter, we're at GenFL23 for Florida's 23rd district. So, and we are really, we'd love this to be tons of monthly small dollar donations, really be like a group effort to do this. And our website, our ask is 23 for 23. So $23 a month for District 23. We'd love monthly donors to be a part of this and follow us as we really take this on the next year.
Awesome. So what is your closing thought that you would like the audience to take with them, just so they can recommend you to people in Florida, or, share this show, give you a shout out? What do you want to leave with them?
I would say that the key issue and the key point of my campaign is actually bringing a person in who sees congressional representation as a term of public service and not a career. And while I'm very happy to talk with people about every policy, and I do tend to be left, that really the issue is what the majority of people in this district want, not what my personal opinion is, and not what the donor's opinion, like not a corporate donor's opinion, and not even the Democratic Party's opinion. So it's if you're interested in having somebody that isn't beholden to anybody other than constituents, that's what we're about.
Right on. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. Absolutely. You guys, thank you for watching as always. Again, tomorrow night, I have Scott, the gentleman who just lost his son. And that's at 9 p.m. Eastern. Then Thursday, me and the crew, I'm going to be meeting some of my real progressive sisters and brothers for the very first time, because we're all over the world, not just the country. But there's a conference in New York City, and we're all traveling there. So we're going to be filming Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're all going to escape and be productive, but party as well. So I will see you guys tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Again, thank you for watching. And again, thank you so much, Jen. And I wish you best of luck with everything.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for interviewing me.
Absolutely. And thanks, Peter. Take care.
Bye.